Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something you might not think about much, the really surprising connection between gender and what we eat. Why are some foods considered manly and others feminine? The answer? Well, it says a whole lot more about us than you might expect. So, let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with just one number. 79%. In the US, a whopping 79% of all vegans are women. Now that's not just a small difference, right? That is a massive gender gap, and it points to something much bigger going on in our culture.
And that leads us to the big question for today. What is going on here? Why this huge disparity? Is it just about taste or health, or is there something way deeper at play? Something that's all tangled up in our ideas about who we are?
To even begin to unpack that 79%, we first have to look at this fundamental and often kind of invisible cultural idea that the food we eat is gendered. Think about it. For a very long time, our culture has basically assigned a gender to food. Research shows we link these big, hearty, meat-heavy dishes with men. It's all about strength and power. But on the flip side, smaller portions, salads, veggies, those are often seen as women's food, tied to ideas about health, being delicate and nurturing. And this right here, this is the core of the whole conflict we're exploring. So let's cut right to the chase. This isn't just about nutrition. It's about what meat symbolizes. This connection between meat, might, and manliness is a powerful script that's been running in our culture for a long, long time.
And this gets to the heart of it perfectly. For centuries, especially in Western cultures, the act of eating meat has been deeply linked with being a real man. It represents this idea of dominance, of having power over nature, of physical strength. It's an idea so powerful it literally shapes what millions of people put on their plates every single day.
And what's wild is just how many ways this idea gets reinforced. You've got the whole man-the-hunter trope from history. You see it today in the ritual of men manning the grill at a barbecue. And some research even points to the sensory experience itself, this primal feeling of eating meat. All of this is propped up by a pretty common set of excuses people use. Researchers came up with this handy framework called the 4 N's to explain how people justify eating meat. They say it's natural, it's normal, it's necessary, and it's nice, as in it tastes good. And here's the key. Studies show that men who hold more traditional views of masculinity, they're way more likely to endorse these justifications. So this isn't just about a meal choice. For many, it's about defending a whole worldview.
So if eating meat is a way of, performing masculinity, what happens when a man decides to step off that stage? Well, he often has to pay a price. There's a social penalty for defying that script.
So what are the actual real-world consequences for guys who choose to go vegan or vegetarian? Well, the research on this is pretty stark.
Yeah, men who don't eat meat often get hit with a whole bunch of negative labels. Studies have found they're seen as weaker, less masculine, and just kind of strange or different. One study even found that just by knowing a man was a vegetarian, some women perceived him as less attractive. And this isn't just an abstract thing. It's a real, lived experience. A review of dozens of studies found that vegan and vegetarian men constantly get challenged by other guys. Their strength, their very manhood, gets called into question, all because of the food they eat. But the story doesn't end there with doom and gloom. Because in the face of all this social pressure, some men aren't just taking it. They are actively trying to redefine what it means to be a man in the 21st century. And funny enough, they're using veganism to do it.
And this is where it gets really clever. Instead of just throwing out the whole idea of masculinity, some men are, they're redoing it. They aren't saying veganism is unmanly. They're arguing that it's a new and maybe even better form of manliness.
So how do they pull that off? Well, they frame veganism using virtues that are already seen as masculine. It takes discipline and willpower to stick to that diet. It's a choice based on cold, hard rationality and science. It's an act of self-determination. You're taking control of your own health. And, it takes real courage to stand up to all that stigma. And to fight that whole weakness thing, they just point to elite vegan athletes as living proof of plant-based strength.
So the big question is, can this kind of rebranding actually work? One study looked into this by marketing vegan food with more masculine branding, and the results were interesting. It did change men's perception of the food. They saw it as more neutral, but it didn't really change what they actually wanted to eat. It just goes to show you, changing these deep, deep cultural habits, that's a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay,
So to really truly understand why that 79% number is so high, we have to go one level deeper. We have to look at a theory that suggests the way we think about meat is tied to these much bigger power structures in our society. The key idea here is something called the absent referent from the work of a theorist named Carol J. Adams. The basic idea is that for us to comfortably eat meat, the actual living animal has to be made absent. We have to mentally disconnect the steak on our plate from the cow it used to be.
And that's the core of it, right there. Meat only exists because an animal is gone. That absence, the forgotten animal, is what lets the whole system work without us having a moral crisis every time we sit down to eat. It's why we say pork instead of pig and beef instead of cow. It creates distance.
Adams argues this happens through a clear three-step process. First, a living being is objectified. It's seen as just a thing. Then, it's fragmented, broken down into parts, thighs, wings, ribs, and finally, those parts are consumed, which completely erases their original identity.
And here is the crucial link back to our original question. Feminist vegan theory argues that this exact same structure, objectify, fragment, consume, is a pattern that has historically been used in patriarchal societies to oppress both animals and women. The theory suggests that women might be more likely to recognize and reject this shared system of oppression, which could be one reason for that big gender gap in veganism.
So, to wrap it all up, that 79% number is not about one single thing. It's this complex mix of powerful forces all working together, these cultural rules that scream meat is for men, the very real social pushback guys face if they disagree, and even these deep theoretical connections between our dinner plates and the structure of our society.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty big thought. Our food choices feel so personal, right? But as we've seen, they are tangled up in our culture, our identity, our politics. So if a simple choice about what to eat for dinner is connected to all these powerful ideas, it really makes you wonder, what could changing our plates actually change about ourselves and maybe even about our world? Thanks for watching.